here for our regular weekly Chairman's Update. As I've mentioned in the last couple of weeks, there is a lot going on right now here in Washington on the political and public policy and legal fronts. Last week, I sort of went on and on. I picked a number of different topics to cover and spoke for a while to you. I think this week I'm going to really just focus on two items that have been in the news that are relevant to everything we do here, to the economy, to the quality of life in Washington, to our legal system, of course. Just two items out of the news, and there'll be many others to talk about in the weeks ahead. It's usually slow in the summer, but for whatever reason, this summer has not been slow at all on the policy front. So the first of the two issues I want to talk about this week is something you may have read about or heard about. But a few days ago, earlier this week, the state's tax revenue forecast working group, this is a group of economists and people from the finance world and some legislators who get together and go over economic performance numbers for the state of Washington, and based on those, come up with a quarterly projection on how much tax revenue the state government in Olympia is likely to collect in the next few months, and then it looks also at the next couple of years. These are critical economic reports because they have a lot to do with the state's budgets and how basically the cash flow coming into the state government can meet the payments that the state government needs to make as part of its regular 2-year budget process. They do these reports quarterly, and each quarter the state government adjusts its spending and its budget actions based on the revenue forecast of tax monies coming into the state. Well, the quarterly report that was released just a few days ago was bad news for the state government. The projected quarterly, and they do a 2-year forward-looking estimate too, those projected receipts, the money coming into the state government, down by over $700 million over projection that the budget, the operating budget of the state was based on. This is a problem. It basically wipes out the ending fund balance for the state government in the upcoming 2-year operating budget cycle. And that creates a problem for the legislature because by law in the state of Washington, budgets have to be balanced. That means that their ending fund balance, the estimated money in the bank at the end of the 2-year budget cycle, has to be a positive number. That's the simplest measurement of whether an operating budget is balanced or not. Well, the current projected ending fund balance on the operating budget of the Washington state government is rather small. And if this $700+ million shortfall holds out, that ending fund balance either is close to zero or it may be a negative number. If it's a negative number, the budget, by the letter of the law, is illegal. And the most common reaction, the most common response, is that the governor would have to call a special session of the state legislature to adjust the budget in order to keep that ending fund balance at the end of the 2-year cycle in the positive. Now, it's unclear right now exactly how these numbers would shake out, and the current governor, who's in really crisis mode, damage control mode, because he signed that 2-year budget, and he probably shouldn't have. He probably should have required a larger ending fund balance, so a little bit reckless on the current governor's part to sign that bad budget. So he's in damage control mode now. He's insisting that he thinks there's no need for a special session, and he might be right. But that's kind of a risky thing The safer bet, the more conservative, and I mean that with a small c, the more conservative approach would be to call a special session and adjust the budget accordingly. He's going to take a chance and not do that, apparently. We'll see how long that lasts. But he's in crisis mode, and he's putting out photo ops saying, I'm hard at work, trying to adjust how we spend. Well, the truth is he's not. The truth is he had his chance to do something significant about the budget. When he signed it, he could have vetoed it, or he could have negotiated in a more experienced and sensible way with the legislature while the operating budget was being negotiated. He didn't do those things. So now he's kind of stuck. He's got to pretend there's not a problem while everyone kind of acknowledges there's a budget problem in Olympia. And so we'll see how he fares in the weeks ahead. There's a lot of educated guessing going on in Olympia that he is going to have to call a special session at some point because the budget, and now this is the operating budget, the biggest of the three budgets in our state government, it's too close to a negative number, and he's taking a big risk by pretending nothing's wrong. It's worth pointing out that the current governor, Mr. Ferguson, is new at the job, and while he talks a big game, he has not actually been in the governor's seat before, so he doesn't really know how to handle these issues, and it shows, frankly. So we'll see what happens with this new budget crisis. It is real. It's a problem. I've said before that previous kind of rhetoric about budget issues in Olympia are often overblown. This one's kind of not. This one is an issue that we do need to address. Maybe we can hold out to the next regular session in Olympia, but I'm not sure that's the right thing to do. Moving on to the second item I want to talk about this week, something a little more complicated, but a little more interesting too. We are seeing the federal government, the new Trump administration back in DC, really beginning to take action here in Washington and on the West Coast more generally with bad public policy that we have at the state level here. The first real action that the Trump administration has taken here in Washington anyway, of significance, is the U.S. Department of Justice has joined a lawsuit challenging a recently passed left-wing bill into law that makes clergy members mandatory reporters if during a consecrated confession, during ritual confession, they learn of wrongdoing, criminal wrongdoing. Now they have to report that to state authorities. This is a highly controversial proposal. It's been beating around Olympia for quite a while, never got through. It got through this last session, and this new current governor eagerly signed it into law, but there are constitutional issues with it. While we want to prosecute criminals at all levels, we have to realize that religious ritual and ritual confession is protected explicitly by both the federal Constitution and the First Amendment protections of religious liberty, and in the state Constitution in Article 1, Section 11, which is the analog, part of our state Constitution that talks about religious freedom and what the state Constitution refers to as absolute freedom of conscience in matters of religious faith. The bill has constitutional defects. We talked about them when the bill was debated on the floor of the legislature. The progressive left rammed it through anyway, and as I say, the new governor signed it. But the lawsuit challenges this rule, which breaks long-standing traditions of religious ritual and allowing for religious freedom, and makes things said in the confidence of ritual confession now subject to mandatory reporting requirements. A lot of the debate around this bill, now law, has focused on its effects on Roman Catholic priests. But the truth is, the bill wasn't even primarily designed to apply to Catholic priests. The main target was the Jehovah's Witness Church, Jehovah's Witnesses, who have a similar form of ritual confession in their religion. And certainly a number of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, were also concerned about it, as the requirement interferes with their similar rituals of confession and penance. So we need to recognize that the constitutional law protects ritual confession and penitential confession, and this state statutory law has problems with breaking the so-called seal of confidence. It's a balancing act. There may be some way to thread the needle more effectively, but the lawsuit that the U.S. Department of Justice has joined says that this particular attempt to do it, and it was Senate Bill 5375, for those of you who like to look these things up, doesn't work. The balance is not right in it, and it's unconstitutional. The leader of these efforts so far, of the federal government here in Washington, is the Assistant Attorney General, Harmeet Dillon. She's from California originally, and a number of conservatives and Republicans here in Washington like Dillon. She ran to be the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee a couple of years ago and had quite a bit of support here in Washington. She ended up falling a little bit short in that campaign, but had a lot of support in Washington. And when President Trump was reelected last November, he also liked Harmeet Dillon. She's a very aggressive and outspoken woman and a very good lawyer, and he has brought her in as one of the assistant attorney generals in D.C. in the Department of Justice. She's heading up this lawsuit, or at least the federal government's portion of this lawsuit, to protect religious freedom and freedom of conscience. She also is sued down in California over California's bad laws around very loose voter registration, not requiring proof of citizenship when people register to vote in California. That has a direct impact on us here in Washington because, of course, we are putting forward initiative IL 26-126, which would require proof of citizenship here in Washington when people register to vote. And IL 26-126, the initiative, is very much in line with an analogous executive order that President Trump has put out at the federal level, and the arguments that Harmeet Dillon and the other lawyers at the U.S. Department of Justice are making in this case down in California. So we know that our initiative here in Washington State to require that proof of citizenship when you register to vote is in line with the arguments that the Trump administration and Harmeet Dillon and the Department of Justice are making in court. And to repeat, I've talked about this before, but to repeat for emphasis, IL 26-126 only deals with requiring proof of citizenship when you register to vote. It does not touch vote by mail. The Seattle Times counterfactually, wrongly, falsely said that the initiative tries to get rid of vote by mail. That's not what it does. And the Times made other mischaracterizations of the initiative. It does one thing. It requires proof of citizenship when you register to vote in Washington State, and that lines up very closely with the arguments that Harmeet Dillon, the Assistant Attorney General at the U.S. Department of Justice, is making right now in court down in California. We like this alignment, and we think it's good for election integrity and good for rebuilding confidence people have in elections in Washington and California and all over the country. That's it for this week. Just 2 issues. There's so much going on. I'll talk to you again next week and cover some more public policy points and politics. But for now, be well and stay strong. Talk to you soon.